Commissioner?
But you still have all the things that happen with unoccupied houses.
Hey, Lindsay, are you there?
Plus, like I say, you know.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can. We just wanted to do a test. Tanya, are you on as well?
What's that?
Oh, I just wanted to see if you could hear us as well.
And
Hi.
while the tribe does a decent job,
Okay, well, we have it unmuted so you guys can hear what's going on in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, I will mute.
Yeah, you just mute on your end.
Thank you.
All right.
I don't think in those terms, but, you know, I know that's an intelligent thing to do when you get to be old.
At some point, it's going to get us all thinking.
Yeah. Because when Ron Pascal mentioned the 13, I'm sure it's not the same anymore, but at the time he was talking about it, he mentioned the 13 kids that were in there and in charge related to homicide. You know, that does kind of remind you that no matter how many people say these kids are sweet as a they are. They just have to be young.
Well, and we have
She's
so
on
the Phillips really good organization that we say to improve the state hospital.
I'm convinced that the Oxycontin and Cotin and
She should be on email, Nicole.
Yes, sir.
the opioids have changed the world, and it's not going back.
Calendar last, because we think we have April's scheduled too, so we'll print that off for you. We'll do that last.
Starting?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Okay. So let's see what the schedule, we have, one commissioner needs to leave pretty quick, so let's cover either the important or the fast stuff first on committee.
Okay.
What do we have?
We have Dr. Craig here today to talk about criminal justice statistics and kind of the program evaluation.
Okay.
Mr. Poon, when he gets here, would like to talk about kind of the selection process for chair and vice chair tomorrow, so maybe we should do that first.
Okay.
And then finally, I think we want to talk about schedule and calendar. And that's what we have to discuss today.
Okay. So, Commissioner Howell, that's scheduling. Is that, you're going to be all right if we switch that around, if that, you want to do that?
Okay.
Right.
All right, Mike, we're going to talk about the plan for tomorrow on chair and vice chair first today. so. Cole, you can go ahead.
Yep, good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners. Talk a little bit about the process we're going to do tomorrow to pick a chair and a vice chair. By statute, KSA 19-219, every year, the County Commission, it says on the second Monday of January or within 30 days thereafter, shall organize by electing one of their number as chairman for a term of 1 year. There's really no provision for a vice chair except that this board can approve a vice chair on a temporary basis if such position is needed. In the past, this commission has always elected a vice chair at the same time that they've elected a chair, so you don't have to go through the process at the last minute of trying to come up with a vice chair. In 2020, and in most years that I've ever remembered being around the county, we've taken nominations from the bench. You didn't need a second for a nomination. We took up the position of the chairman or the chairperson of the commission first. They voted on that just from the bench, just as we do on any matter in the same order that we do on any county matter. And then once the chair was elected, then they went to the issue of doing the same process for the vice chair. Again, anybody could put their name in nomination, anybody could nominate somebody, didn't need a second, and it would go through that vote process. Last year, 2021, we used ballots to do the voting. And we can't do it by secret ballot, but I think they all have copies of the proposed ballots. Under the Kansas Open Meetings Law, you can't have a secret ballot, but at least by doing it by ballot, you don't have a particular order. Commissioner Lopez doesn't have to vote first, Chairman Meitzner doesn't have to vote last, and you can go through the process and you can merely do your voting and then have the clerk's office read off the tally at the end of the vote, and if there isn't a majority, then you would have, or there isn't 3 votes for any one person, then you'd go through the same process again. But there really isn't anything by state law or anything else other than you're required to elect a chair as far as processes. So I'm leaving it up to you to tell me how you want to do it tomorrow, whether you want to go back to the traditional way that we've done for most of the years or do what we did last year with the ballots. So
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think outside of a majority of the commissioners making a decision on this, it's probably left up to the chair to decide what process to use. So.
All right, well, we can take comments how the commission feels. I'm comfortable with the written ballot, fold and deliver at once, but everybody can voice what they believe. Okay. Okay, a nod of I don't care, that's fine, and you all, and David says okay too, Commissioner Howell. We say these and then we stop. Can we get 5 copies of this? Okay, sorry.
We won't
Commissioner
be,
Howell.
Requires part of this formality, bottom of the signature, the printed name, just 5 of us here, so
Right, okay,
that's just one comment. But I agree, ballots are fun.
okay. So we'll do ballots, we'll do chairman first, and then we'll do pro tem. Okay,
okay.
thank you.
All right, Steve, are you going to introduce Dr. Craig, or is she just going to go? All right, Dr. Craig, we're ready for you. Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Let me just get us going here. Maybe. I think I'm going to get my glasses. I think I need to be able to see what I'm doing. I apologize. If you don't object, I'm going to slide this mask down, so. it's a little tricky to be talking. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the juvenile justice programs. The report of the program evaluation should have reached your hands at this point, and I will go through the individual programs. I'll talk a little about what's happening to the juvenile justice system, but principally I'm just going to talk about the programs. What's new and different in this particular program evaluation is a report on the first round of evidence-based programming funds from the Kansas Department of Corrections Juvenile Services. That is the result of the drawing of some of the money from the trust fund that was created as a result of Senate Bill 367. So let me just start. Okay, so what we're talking about here with the programs that have been reviewed in the usual manner, which is I do a couple of site visits each year. I review data. I work with the juvenile division administrative staff, and we get good feedback on the outcomes, so I can talk about the outcomes. And so $482,601 of Sedgwick County crime prevention funds were used in the year that I'm reporting for, which is state fiscal year 21. In addition, $85,923 was used from KDOC's juvenile service funds. Every year they give us roughly $165,000, and that supports some case management as well as legal services. The unduplicated number was 489 individuals served. That's the all-time low for us with these funds. I think you understand the principal reason for that being the pandemic. And for most of these programs, the biggest change as the schools flexed over and over, each time it seemed to have a negative effect on the ability of programs to relate and connect in the usual ways. So there's some difficulties there. But this if you're dollar and cents people, that means that there was an average of $987 spent per client served. That's not spent per successful client served, that's for all clients served. So the pandemic has really changed our picture pretty dramatically, so there's no getting around that. So for juvenile justice overview, in the prior 2 years, I've reported each time that there's been a decline in the number of cases filed and the number of juveniles who come through and take an assessment. And this is following the same sort of thing. The juvenile filings we're roughly at a third now of what we were in 2020. I'm sorry, in 2000. I'm getting myself here messed up. The reality is there have been a lot of changes in the past 20 years, and those changes have resulted in a much smaller population. With COVID and attempts to limit exposures, that's been suppressed even more. Juvenile correctional facility admissions in 2000 were 270, and they were 112. Some of this, again, Senate Bill 367 changed the whole picture for juvenile justice by limiting the length of time that juveniles are under supervision and limiting the conditions under which they can be confined. The combined impact of 367 and the pandemic caused a very steep decline. There's fewer cases. That means fewer clients, and some of our programs are reserved for only juveniles who have touched the juvenile system. So when you reduce that number, the referral base becomes kind of a challenging thing for the providers. The crime prevention programs, you have secondary prevention programs. The Mental Health Association does a program called PATHS that's a elementary school group curriculum experience, very definitely impacted by anything going on in the schools because they need elementary classrooms with groups of students, and so anything that changes that makes it tough. Pando provides case management for middle school kids. Both these programs are available in multiple school districts, but they are very much linked to school districts. The tertiary prevention programs that are available for kids who've already gotten into trouble include Detention Advocacy, the home-based service that's through our own Sedgwick County Department of Corrections, does some case management to either avoid or reduce the amount of time that kids spend in detention. We had functional family therapy, which is pretty much what it sounds like. It's an intensive effort to try and help a family reconnect in a new way with their kids. Higher Ground is substance abuse education and treatment, and CBAR is an alternative education program. So before I get into the programs, I thought it would be useful to talk about our needs. Our needs in general, Team Justice reviews annually. They're getting ready to do it again. We're preparing a risk analysis that they'll look at. But they go through the known risk factors for delinquency, and they identify the risk factors that are most prevalent in Sedgwick County. And then we try to find programs that address those risk factors because that's what the science tells us is the most cost-effective way to do business. You can see the three that are probably the most damaging if they're present in an individual are antisocial personality, cognitions, and associates. Our grandmothers were right when they said if we hang out with those bad kids, sooner or later it's going to do something that's not good. And the rest of it kind of goes along with it, which is personality and ideas or ways of thinking. The second tier is family, school, and substance abuse. Those, what programs have done is combine one of those first three risk factors with something that the vehicle for it is either family or school or some kind of substance abuse intervention. So the programs themselves, as I mentioned earlier, for secondary prevention, there's the Pando initiative. They received $66,784, served 54 individuals. 34 of them were successful. Some of the reasons for lack of success were things about which Pando could do nothing. If kids' families moved, then they were no longer in the school that was the place where the service was delivered. So roughly 2/3 of the kids were successful. The Mental Health Association received $62,439 to serve 132 youth. And there 113 were successful. Again, both these programs are school-based, and any disruption or change in school delivery, education delivery, makes a huge difference to them. So I'll go through those programs individually. If you want to connect with the page where the program description is, Pando is on page 26 of the evaluation report. They target moderate to high-risk kids. They do not serve low-risk kids. That was an issue at one time. They've actually done a much better job over the last year. It's unfortunate that their numbers have been very adversely affected by what's gone on. They have 4 sites, and 3 of them are in USD 259, and one's in Derby. And So that the state fiscal year 2021 included the fall semester that was 2020, and during that period, mostly students were learning remotely, and it made it extremely difficult. In fact, Pando essentially received no referrals. So the 54 youth that they served all came to them both from Derby School District and from the Wichita School District during the second half of the year. Their outcomes showed that the program did not change chronic absence. Again, that was problematic during the entire pandemic period, has been problematic. Schools say that they have a much higher rate of absenteeism. It did impact their juvenile justice outcomes. By that, I'm talking about the frequency with which kids they had served go back to JIAC. That was reduced. There was only one youth that appeared at 6 months and another at 12 months. So they served 54. Their main challenge was numbers, and the main reason was they were not really able to accommodate what the pandemic did to the school. I spoke with them at length about maybe offering a summer program or doing something, because we know that the kids still had needs, but they just were not able to shift. And they did decide not to apply for funding this year. I think they felt that their model just wasn't able to flex. So the Mental Health Association, as I said, that's targeted to elementary school students. It's basically a group curriculum. The educator conducts a group in a classroom at one of the chosen sites, and they originally received over $60,000, but they wound up receiving a total of $46,988. They turned back funds because they recognized they were not able to adequately use the money to provide services. They served significantly fewer. Their normal, this program has a very large scale normally, but the changes in the school really disrupted their numbers. And I think we can expect, unless something changes dramatically with the pandemic, we can expect these same challenges to them. Now we'd move on to the tertiary programs, the ones that work with youth that are directly involved in the juvenile justice system. They used $454,752 to provide services to 88 clients, and that includes Detention Advocacy, which is that program that tries to either keep kids out of detention or limit the time they're there. And there's functional family therapy, and that's the family intervention. Learning the Ropes, which is education and treatment for substance abuse, and CBAR, which is the alternative school. So the first one of these is Detention Advocacy. They returned roughly half of the money that the state provided. The numbers, again, because of the major disruptions to the system because of the pandemic, there were fewer detention hearings. The number of kids that were served for case management was much smaller. The numbers for both the legal services and for the case management are determined by the number of kids that are presumptive detention kids. The case management and the legal services are both designed to act in the best interests of the child to minimize detention unless it's absolutely needed. They served all referred youth. They didn't meet the numbers because the numbers just aren't there. If you look at the system picture in the it's on page 4 of the reporting document, the program evaluation report. You can see how the numbers have gone down. If you look at the numbers of youth that are coming through with filings and with JIAC admissions, both are down. So I think it makes total sense. The thing that is good is that the legal services and the case management were available to all who needed them. And that's, I think, an important goal. The next one I'd like to talk about is EmberHope, which is the functional family therapy. That's on page 32 of the program document, 32 and on. They served only 14 of the planned 45. They seem to be figuring out how to get referrals, but then as we went through a surge just about this time last year, everything got disrupted for them. They were short-staffed, and this program for the last couple of years has had a lot of problems with the numbers served and with something that's almost inexplicable. This program is an evidence-based program. It has a national database about what you should expect, and we've never really gotten that level of performance from this program. And, you can look at maybe it's staffing issues, maybe it's some other resistance to some element of the program. I was not ever able to identify anything in my talks with them, but they have been consistently below the national standard for outcomes, and they're very disappointing, and they are not serving us this year. So that's probably a win for us. Learning the Ropes, Higher Ground. This program is offered in different, this is on page 42 and on. This program evaluates youth who are referred because there is suspicion that they have either an addiction or a substance abuse problem. So the referrals that they got this year led them to serve only about half of the kids that they would normally serve. They said that they were receiving like 0 referrals from some of their usual sources. And again, you just have to understand that the pandemic just shifted the focus for a lot of school personnel because they were very much internally involved and not really thinking about referrals and that sort of thing. I think the 100% of the kids were moderate or high risk, which is what we want. We don't want them serving kids that really don't have that need. Most of the kids they serve, in fact, 70% of the kids they served were 16 and 17 years old. What that shows, in the grand span of one's life, that's pretty early in the game, but in adolescence, that means these kids are well into their adolescence when someone decides that they are in need of an evaluation and service. So this is another program that elected to discontinue. They generally met their goals, but they had a critical staff person who decided to quit, and they weren't, in their minds, clear on how they could replace that person. They also were very discouraged by the issues they had with getting referrals. So they are no longer serving. The last one of the regular programs that are funded either through the state DOC Juvenile Services or through the county's Crime Prevention Fund is the Center for Behavioral Applied Research. And they received $139,331 and served 8 students. Their goal was to serve 30 students. The major disruption for them was that USD 259 never made a single referral. And in the prior years, and I'm not believing that there were no suspensions or expulsions, but I do know there is a very reduced number. And for whatever reason, the few students who were expelled or suspended in 259 were simply not referred. A couple of those students found their own way. I think we have some networking issues that maybe I can try and see if I can figure out some ways to work on that, because that's really a very bad thing. When a kid is suspended or expelled for any length of time, if they don't have a program, and CBAR is by far and away the best option, if they don't have a program, they tend to run amok, and it's not a good thing. So somehow we have to get the referral system working as well as possible here. The small number of students, like I say, was very disappointing. Once they realized their connection to 259 was not going to be providing referrals, they did become active with Hayesville schools, Derby schools, and other districts, which I think is what you would want them to do. But it definitely didn't solve their numbers in entirety.
Doctor, can we interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
Question? Okay.
Sure.
Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. I just have one quick question around, so these referrals, if they're not, how is the referral system designed? I mean, are teachers, so if a child gets expelled, is it the responsibility of the administration to refer? Is it the social worker? Whose responsibility in the schools is it to refer?
They have an individual, one person who does a kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it, a debrief or a exit interview, and they do not generally, even in the old system, they didn't make a direct referral. Like, they cannot give the name to CBAR so that CBAR could contact them. They do have a brochure for CBAR, but apparently they weren't even giving that out. They had reduced numbers of suspensions and expulsions because of the change in the system. They still had that individual. That individual sometimes did and sometimes did not give out the brochures. I have no idea why there was such a total disruption. I think there were changes in personnel. I don't think there's been any animosity between CBAR and the school district. At least no one is willing to tell me there is. And the people who did come to CBAR had a brochure. They generally, though, those 8 were there was only one of those that was from USD 259, and as I say, that person sort of found their way on their own because they talked to another parent who happened to know something about it. They did have the brochure, but they didn't, that isn't necessarily compelling to someone who's going through the trauma of a child being expelled or suspended.
So is the reason the name why can't the referral be made directly to CBAR with the name?
Privacy.
Okay, so so each individual school has a person that would refer to your programs?
Each individual school district, not school.
Okay.
The schools.
So you have one person that's responsible for all 90 schools?
That's right.
Oh, wow, okay.
Unless Steve Stonehouse is here and he may have more information. I'm telling you what I've been advised.
Yeah.
That's right, that's the, after the hearing is done, there's a debrief, and exactly like Dr. Craig and
Okay.
Commissioner Cruz explained.
Wow, that's a lot for one person to kind of be handling, and especially with all the other things that we're putting on our school systems right now. So, okay, thank you for that. I just wonder how we can maybe figure out a way to help a referral system, especially when these kids could benefit from these services that really kind of are underutilized. So Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
I think you're on to what we need to focus on with this, with actually the relationship between the school districts in Sedgwick County, all of them, and these programs, because we know they all have some kids that need them. And it's really, the laws that protect your privacy really are there to protect you. There has to be a vehicle for the person at the school district to say to the parent, may I give your information to CBAR? You're in need of assistance and this is a source. And they could have a form and fill it out and have the parent sign it. I mean, that's a pretty straightforward thing. The school district so far has said they are not comfortable with that. I have no idea why. And I don't want to make it sound like I think they're doing something wrong. I just don't understand it, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, there's certainly an opportunity to educate, I think, and that's just something that we'll have to work on.
I agree, and I think if we can ever get to where we have something that approximates normal, whatever that is, I think most of us have a distant memory of that. But if we can ever reach a point where focus can be more normal, like looking at what's going on outside the schools as well as within, then I think those opportunities may be there. Right now, people are school district people, not just in 259, but all of them, are trying to figure out how to do business within their own system, let alone worry about things like referrals. So.
Well, the other thing I think, though, is this is a lot of information. There are a lot of programs. You have a lot of acronyms that you're using that if somebody isn't familiar with this type of program or what the focus is of the program, is there like a cheat sheet that we could create that this one is for substance use, this one is for mental health, this one is for family services? Like, if we could just do something that's really quick that even a teacher, and I don't want to put more on teachers, that's not what I'm trying to say, but my friend is a teacher who handles a population of students that are challenged, and if she had something that was, if she could understand these in a really simple to easy to understand way, she connects with parents more than an administrator at AMAC,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important that, is there a cheat sheet that has been created that would sort of make these really simple and easy to understand with the name of the program and what the program does?
We've had those in the past, and what we found has resulted in the greatest benefit in terms of referrals is the individual contacts that the programs have, because they find the people in the system that are the most likely to access their services, and so they do it. But we can certainly explore that. One of the challenges right now is going to be that we're down to just a couple of funded programs with the crime prevention. We expect that to go back up because there's an RFP out, but several of these programs, as you've heard me talking about them, have elected not to provide services this year. I think if we ever do reach a point where the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, I think we may go back to having a greater menu of things available. But I think several of these programs feel unable to cope with the impact of the pandemic, especially on the schools. Because if you're a program provider and your place of delivery is in a school, if they're doing remote learning, you have zero opportunity. If they're doing in classroom, most of the teachers are unwilling to share any of the kids' time because they feel like they're trying to make up for some of the challenges that have come with remote education. So I think we have to see what we're offered with this RFP, but I like that idea of a basic, these are all the different things, who should this be targeted to, that sort of information I think would be very good. Okay. So I've done the individual programs. I wanted to just give you a couple of highlights. One of the things that I've been working here in Sedgwick County since 1997, I believe. I've been at WSU since 1992, But in all that time, we have always had at least some of our attention on the question of racial and ethnic disparity, and it seems to go up and down, and I wouldn't say we have ever found what you would call a solid method of really coping with it. The success rates, the minority youth were more than half of those served by CBAR, PANDO, and PATHS. But if you look at page 15, 16, and 17, you'll see that the individual programs had greater and lesser degrees of success with minority youth. The success rate for all minority youth was 72% compared to 80% for Caucasian kids. African American youth had a pretty dismal 62% success rate, Hispanics 79%. It seems like the programs have done better with Hispanics, and maybe because of the overt issues there, language being one of them, family connection being a strength for them. Then gender. We've learned through a lot of the research that's been put out from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention and others that separating genders in program services can be extremely important to female success. And in the past, the success rates for both males and females has been very close to the same. But this year, there's quite a difference. The females, 87% success, males, 72% success. And I have no explanation for that. There's no difference in illness rates for males and females, so you can't explain it because of illness dropouts or anything like that. It's hard to really draw any conclusions about it other than to say that we do have gender-specific programming, and it seems to be differentially benefiting the females. We know from the national research that females really need to address underlying issues. Males can be convinced of the effectiveness of improving or changing their ways, but females have to have something that addresses the underlying cause of the delinquency, and apparently that's working. So, as I said when I started this, the KDOC Juvenile Services Evidence-Based Funding, this was the first year where we could actually look at what was going on for, well, this was the first year of the funding. There was $729,000 available to Sedgwick County programs. The money had to be used only on youth that were in the juvenile system. It could not be used for at-risk youth. So what wound up happening, because we got the announcement in January and had to make decisions on it by March. So what happened to a great deal of the money was unmet training needs and staff improvement needs in the programs that were serving juvenile offenders. There's, on page 57 and on, you can see, actually it's 56 and on, sorry, page 56 and on. There's a summary. The executive summary tells you a little bit about it, but from 57 and on, where it was used for specific programs, like the first one was the crossover youth. Crossover youth are ones that are involved both in the child welfare system as well as the juvenile justice system. And the decision was made to hire a person whose job was to track those youth and see if they were being served by both of those systems. You can see the numbers tracked and how that was used. Then there was also a coordination of services. Some of these programs had trouble getting staff, so they wound up referring or turning some funds back. A great deal of the money, as I say, was spent on additional curriculum materials, additional trainings for staff, that sort of thing. So you can see it all there. It was basically used to fill gaps. And as I said when I started this, the fact that you could only serve juvenile offenders, you could not serve at-risk youth, made a substantial impact on how the money was used. But you can see the detail there. So let's look at the total program impact. 489 youth were served in at least one of the programs, and some youth were served in both programs. There were 332 successful cases, that's 77.5%. Crossover youth were tracked. Minority youth had a less successful rate. I'm not proud of exactly how we've done with these programs this year, because I try really hard to, this is not me throwing myself on any sword here, but I think that Sedgwick County does a very good job of paying attention to the needs of our juvenile offenders and our at-risk youth, and these programs, their outcomes do not reflect that. And there's no getting around the fact that the main reason they don't reflect it is the penetrating impact of the pandemic. If kids are not in school, our favorite vehicle for delivery is not available. The Mental Health Association is looking at ways to do remote services for kids if we happen to go back to remote education. They're so far the only one that's really trying to shift gears, but they have a nationally recognized evidence-based program for curriculum that they use, so they can't do it without the authorization of the program provider, and they are working with them. I'd be happy to try to answer any other questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Dr. Craig Moreland. Let's see, we have a comment or question from Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Doctor, thanks for being back with us again this year. I appreciate it. I guess it's disturbing that last year we had a briefing that was almost identical to this one, and I didn't see any change. I would have hoped that our folks here on our staff would have recognized the briefing last year was not acceptable and been able to pivot and adjust to that. But what I'm seeing instead, we spent $454,000, almost $500,000 on 88 kids, and so it cost us $5,167 each for some pretty dismal results. If you look at the different grants, the Detention Advocacy grant, we only served 26 youth. That was $6,435 for each one of those students. I know that functional therapy is not going to be back next year, but it cost us over $9,000 for each one of those students that were hopefully served. Learning ropes, it won't be back next year. It cost us $2,500 per student. The Centers for Behavioral Applied Research only served 8 students at a cost of over $17,500 per student. We've now had 2 years where we've had the exact same results, and the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same results and not pivoting. So I am not going to be happy if I hear a third year that your evaluation says the same thing. We're not serving the people that we need to serve. Granted, there's a pandemic, but we have to adjust to that pandemic, and we didn't. We didn't adjust for 2 years. So if you come back next year and tell me that we haven't adjusted a third year, then I'm going to have some significant concerns about what we're doing. This is a critical program. Your evaluation is critical to the success of that program moving forward. We have to have the staff take a look at your evaluation and find out what we're doing wrong and do it right next year. So am I upset? Absolutely. Are we doing it right? Absolutely not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I know you're not asking me a question, but I'd like to comment on it. I think the reason that several of these programs aren't coming back is that we put increasing resources available to them, and we put pressure on them. I made more visits than usual. I tried to engage them about different methods of receiving referrals. I can't explain it exactly. There just was no movement other than they finally recognized that same thing that you're talking about, which is for 2 years they've taken, maybe they've turned back some money, but they've taken a substantial amount of money and been severely deficient in what they're able to do. I totally agree with you. I believe your Department of Corrections staff that I work with, I know have been out there every time I've been out there, and we have discussed outcomes, discussed shortcomings in referrals. They understand, but they seem to be just immobilized. I can't, and you deserve better. I'm not suggesting you don't deserve better. I just don't know how to get us there at this point, frankly. Maybe I shouldn't admit that, Tom. I don't know.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. I think it's okay to admit when we have a challenge that we're not real sure how to overcome. I mean, that is, I think that shows that you recognize there's an issue and maybe we should figure it out together. I think that we have had I'll use the word, unprecedented couple of years here, and when a lot of these referrals come from our school systems, we've got to do better as a community for those schools. I don't know how many, I have a child in school right now. She had 3 of her friends out yesterday. Teachers and administrations are just trying to keep kids well and in the classroom, in addition to all of the teachers well and in the classroom. So, there's a real focus on education of children, and I think we need to provide some grace to people. This is not an easy time for anyone. I think the community as a whole needs to understand that we have real challenges and we have programs to provide help for these challenges, but when you're focused on just trying to keep people in school to learn basics, it's hard to sort of handle behaviors as well. So I do, I'm disappointed in these numbers as well, but I think that there's an opportunity to figure out how we can do better, and educating folks around the programs that we have in a simple to easy to understand way. Let's figure out how to help people understand what's even available, because maybe that's as simple as that. And then we have to hire people because we have a staffing shortage all over the place. So I will end with just saying thank you so much for your time today. This is a lot of information, like a lot of work, a lot of information that goes into this. And I'll have to just check it out. Maybe we can have a follow-up meeting to really dive into some of this, and I'd love to be part of the solution so that next year the reports are better.
I will tell you that with the programs that are funded through the evidence-based, this second year of evidence-based funding, as well as the 2 programs that are funded through the Sedgwick County Crime Prevention, I've sort of been on their case a little bit these first 6 months of this year, and I see improvements, not in every one of them, but I see improvements in their understanding of what's happening. It's too early to say. I do an in-depth site visit in February. I have them scheduled for the first week in February, and I'm hopeful that I'm going to see things that are more encouraging.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Doctor, thanks again for addressing this, and good luck with everything. It's quite a challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Tom?
Well, we have the April calendar coming out to commissioners, and we can talk about this kind of the next few months of commission meeting schedules. If you want to make any modifications.
Thank you.
Well, it was pointed out as we were getting ready to start that in February, the 16th, most of us will be in Topeka for that day. And a suggestion, I think, that we would agree upon is moving the 16th meeting to the 23rd.
Have that one
I
circled too.
think
yeah.
that's, was talked, and then tell me again, Commissioner Cruz.
It looks like they have it on here, Chairman. The 13th, just so
Okay.
that,
Yeah,
I don't know if you're aware, Commissioner Lopez, we were talking before about a mental health summit that's in Topeka. It's juvenile, or it's criminal justice focused. I'll be attending that. I don't know if other commissioners wanted to attend that. It's April 13th. It's April 13th all day, and then it's the morning of April 14th. So shifting the 27th meeting. So no meeting the 13th in April, but a meeting on the 27th.
right, if that's all right. Let's go with that for calendar adjustments.
All right.
Okay?
Got them both. We'll put a meeting on the 23rd of February, and we already have the meeting canceled for April 13th. Okay.
And if it, April has, just four Wednesdays. I was gonna say, if the agenda's light at the end of April, we'll know by then. I mean, obviously, we can get there, okay?
Good.
All right,
we
anything
have.
else? Okay, I don't see anything, so we will adjourn and see everybody tomorrow morning. Thank you.